Welcome into the latest edition of ESPN FC. I'm Dan Thomas, joined by Craig Burley and Shaka Hislop. We also welcome to the programme today, Mark Ogden is here, and for the very first time, former referee Andy Davies joins us. Just to warn you, Andy, referees haven't had a great time on this show in the past.
Okay.
So we'll just set the
Should be like a social
there.
worker for referees, because we, you know, the amount of abuse over the years Clattenburg and Peter Walton have had.
Yeah, and Howard Webb.
Well, I was just looking at those goals, and I was trying to find reasons to disallow some of them.
Yeah,
so
of course, that's top 10 goals. That's coming later on in the show. Right then, Andy, let's get straight to it then, shall we, mate? What on earth were your boys thinking giving this goal for Spurs?
Well, listen, it's an interesting one, isn't it? And it's caused incredible debate and split opinion over the last 24 hours. I've spoken to many an ex-player and ex-manager who are split down the middle in terms of whether they feel it should be a goal or not. The question really is in terms of not whether it's whether it's enough of an error or clear and obvious error for the VAR to get involved and overrule it or recommend an on-field review. And I think there's enough doubt, in my view. Overall, I'm quite comfortable that a non-intervention is the correct outcome, and we can discuss the merits of that and the detail of that if you like in a second. But
now, we should say Andy was a former player as well. Mm-hmm. So I'm a little surprised, bearing in mind he was unless he's completely just turned to the other side, obviously with the refereeing. Because I didn't think that was when I saw it, I didn't really see it at full speed, and I don't criticise any referee for missing something at the speed of the game is played these days. But when you roll in all the technology and all the, you know, with the VAR, I think it was Jared Gillett back at Stockley, I just don't see how this cannot be a free kick. I don't think the clear and obvious comes into it. It's really a phrase that annoys me anyway, because it's, you know, it's either a free kick or it's not. And there's no other place in the park, on the pitch, this is not given. Because once you kick through the back of an opponent, as Gay planted his leg down, it's a free kick. And I was really...
a couple of good points there. Sorry, Craig. I mean, if you look at it in real time, as I did initially, it just looks like a goal, right? It looks like there's nothing, there's no foul contact, and you'd expect the goal to be given. As every player on the pitch expected, there was no appeal for a foul from any of the Man City players. And so that's the starting point from the VAR. The VAR looks at it from a real time perspective, and he's not looking. It doesn't feel like a foul. It doesn't look like a foul. But therefore, he's not going overly to try and overly look for a foul in the review process. And I think the interesting thing is just in part of it is when you break down, when you start slowing it down and framing it. You then start finding potential reasons to give a foul. But equally, if you look at it again, you can also find reasons not to give a foul, because if you look at Gay's actions, he's actually the one who instigates the contact. The ball's there in front of Solanke. Gay comes in from the side. He steps into Solanke. He initiates the contact. Okay, so that's the first part the VAR would have looked at. So he doesn't make any challenge for the ball, Gay. Gay just steps in to block Solanke. Solanke at that point is then winding up to take a shot. And as he takes his shot, that foot that Gay's pushed in and stepped into Solanke's path, he makes no contact on the ball, Gay, until he steps on the heel of Solanke, if anything else.
Andy, how can you say he hasn't gone for the ball? Gay's clearly gone for the ball there.
But he hasn't made contact with the ball. Dan, he stepped into Solanke. Okay, so he's initiated the contact. What I'm trying to say to you is that whether you think it's a foul or not, the point is the VAR has to decide whether it's a clear and obvious error. And I think there's elements of it for him looking at that thinking it doesn't feel like a foul, it doesn't look like a foul. Those mitigating circumstances that he's looking at thinking, well, I'm really not sure. And the VAR is always encouraged when they're in that grey zone of, am I sure? Am I not sure? They're asked to step away from recommended on-field review, and so I can understand why there wasn't one on the day.
If I'm shielding the ball, if the ball's going out to the corner of the pitch, so it's slightly different, but the ball's within playing distance, and I step across to let the ball roll out for a goal kick, and that player fouls me or shoves me, I don't have to have played the ball. I just have to have got my body in front.
Yeah.
That's your position as a player.
You're getting a free kick all day.
Well, you're always told as a player to get in front of your opponent, to get your body, and that's why we see so many free kicks given. Players do it. They get the body in front, between the ball and another player, and they go to ground. And more often than not, in the middle of the park, they get a free kick, and it's very soft. But I don't have to play the ball. I just have to make sure the ball's within playing distance, and I get myself across, in my opinion, which is what Gay does. Therefore, he's the guy now that's pretty much in control of that situation, even though it was all fast, very fast moving. And Dominic Solanke, rightly going for goal, kicks through the back of the calf, initiating the contact. I mean, Gay's doing what he's paid to do.
Andy?
Yeah, no, I get the point. I think there is certainly two sides to it. What the point I'm trying to make and the view I'm giving is that the VAR needs to be absolutely convinced that there is a clearing of its error. And I think when you put those elements I just spoke about in terms of Gay, he actually steps into Solanke, steps on the back heel of Solanke, although it's minor. Those mitigating circumstances aligned with, like, when the VAR first watched it, he's thinking it doesn't look like a foul, it doesn't feel like a foul. I'm now looking for reasons to give a foul, and that would be the thought process is why he didn't recommend an on-field review. Now, listen, there's discussions both ways, and like I've spoken to ex-managers and ex-players today, totally split opinion, and I totally respect both sides of the argument, but it's trying to give some rationale of how the VAR didn't get involved. And recommend an on-field review in this situation.
I will only say this. I agree with Andy in that in real time you thought it was a coming together goal. But from the time you see the replay, I'm not sure that there's any debate to be had here, Andy. It's quite clear that Gahey, as a defender, puts his body in between man and ball, which every defender has every right to do, and that Solanke kicks through the back of Gahey. Now, you're saying the VAR, whoever he is, doesn't see any reason or is now looking for a reason to give a foul. No, if he doesn't see a reason to give a foul there, then that is problematic. Because then positions change. Anytime a defender goes to the back of a striker, as long as he makes contact with the ball, it's fine. Because what you are saying, Andy, what the PGMOL are saying in their statement is, because there was contact on the ball, it's fine. And we have sat here and discussed, for as long as I can remember, that getting contact on the ball does not justify going through someone. So if there's an argument to be made that this goal should stand, there's a bigger issue around just going through players and making contact with the ball and that being fine anywhere on the park.
Andy?
Yeah, no, I'll put a little bit more context to it. I think in the last couple of weeks we've seen some examples of where VAR have been asked to up their threshold in terms of what they get involved with and what they don't. And I think this probably reflected part of that work that they've been doing. And I think when you going back to what we said, when you slow anything down, and we spoke about this weeks and weeks and weeks, when you slow anything down and you frame it and frame it and frame it, everything looks a lot worse, and you can always find a reason to make a decision one way or the other. I think you just look at it in real time, it doesn't look like a foul, it doesn't feel like a foul. And when you put the circumstances together that I spoke about a moment ago, that's the position I'm assuming Gerard Gillett had, and he didn't feel there was enough of an error in that moment to recommend an on-field review. Totally understand your points, and they're all valid. But if you think looking from the VAR's perspective, he's looking for an absolute clear error in that moment, and he doesn't feel that he's seen one.
Andy, the narrative is that we need an ex-player in the booth to help. Do they do like a Men in Black on you? What happens when you sign up as a referee? Because the player perspective here from everyone we're speaking to seems to be that is a foul.
Yeah, no, I respect that. And there's been quite a few players that I've spoken to today, and I heard yesterday are the opposite opinion. So I think it is completely split. I think you want to be really careful about expecting an ex-player to go into the VAR hub and being 100 times better than what they've currently got, because it's a tough job, and I don't know if you guys have ever tried it. It's a tough gig, and it's not quite as straightforward as easy as you probably think it is. So I don't think we're going to get potentially any different or any better outcomes. I don't know if you guys have ever experienced it or have had any dealings with the VAR at all, but it's probably worth doing it and just getting that experience. But I don't think necessarily a football background is going to help you in every situation.
Yeah, I've never been a big believer in an ex-player should go in the booth.
We should send you there for a couple of months.
Well, I'll go if the money.
Yeah. Yeah.
If the money's right.
Half a year, a season.
Yeah.
One-way ticket.
I'll chip in.
We'll have a crowd.
If the cap fits. I've never been a big believer in putting ex-players in because half of them have got the blinkers on for clubs that they used to play for. And so that's the first problem straight away.
You don't have that problem. You have no loyalty to anyone.
Well, that's not true. Outside of football, yes. It's a very sweeping statement. I just don't. I know it's a difficult job, but at least for me, and I know there's been a big talking point about VAR taking too long in a lot of games, and that is another debate. But would not, even for all the points Andy made, would it not even have been worth Jared Gillett, who's an experienced referee, the Australian, sending over the on-field referee just for 30 seconds and say, listen, I know you missed this. I'm not sure it's meeting the threshold, but go and have 30 seconds and make your mind up for yourself. That at least would have been something. I'd just leave it with these. I think this was it's 2-2, City threw points away, but this was a big talking point. And is it not worth 30 seconds? Even if you're thinking clear and obvious and all these things, just send I always like the official in the middle, where possible, and it's not always, but where possible, to be given the final say, particularly with the technology. And I would have liked, at the very least, to have seen the referee in that Tottenham City game just go and have 30 seconds. And then if he said, no, I'm not giving it, then that's another debate for us. But we didn't get to that point.
Let's just take a look at some other incidents, shall we? Let's head to Old Trafford, of course, Manchester United beating Fulham eventually by 3-2. A goal would actually, of course, come from this free kick, but in the build-up to it, a penalty was awarded. And there was a lot of confusion around exactly what was being checked here. As the referee gave the penalty, was it for the pull of the shirt, or was it for the challenge that came after that? Obviously, we then realised, after quite a long delay, that it was in fact for the pull on the shirt. They would check, it was outside the box. Therefore, he didn't have to go to the monitor because it could be shown that it wasn't within the 18-yard box. And then, of course, the goal would come from it. Before I go to you, Andy, Oggy, you were there, obviously, at Old Trafford. It's this confusion that frustrated a lot of people, I think, who are watching this game. Certainly, I imagine, in the stands.
Yeah, I mean, we were definitely confused watching it because I don't know if the actual TV footage showed this or gave any kind of sound, but it seemed as though the referee blew the whistle after the foul in the box. We all thought that it was because of the challenge on Cunha, and when obviously you saw the replay, it was clear that the defender got the ball. So there was no suggestion or inclination that it was for the tug outside the box because it was only a slight tug. It wasn't something that we would expect to be given as a free kick outside the box. So it was very confusing. The first, like I said, review of the replay said yes, a foul inside the box, wasn't a foul, no penalty. But then it wasn't a penalty, it was a free kick. So it was very confusing. And Old Trafford is one of the worst stadiums to have these reviews because there's no big screen, so that made it even worse. But yeah, it was a difficult one to get your head around, especially with the way it turned out at the end with the free kick given instead of a penalty.
Andy, obviously there's some people calling to hear the VAR audio right from the start, and this would clear up any of this frustration for the viewers.
Yeah, no, it's something I've advocated for a long time, and I just think that is the next step for the Premier League to move to an open mic system where everybody can hear the comms, because everyone at some point will hear the comms eventually, and it just, like you say, it just clears up any confusion on the day. This is a FIFA directive that don't currently allow that to happen. The reasons I'm not 100% sure. I think it's something to do with, if they change the rule for the Premier League, they have to change the rule for every league in the world, and I don't think they're ready for that step yet. But it is quite frustrating, and I think it will clear up and add value to where we are in terms of the current access to where we're at.
Well, the commentators, and I can't remember who they were for the world feed that we had, or the NBC broadcast. I can't remember which one it was, but whoever it is normally have the VAR feed in the rears along with the director. Now, whether they had it turned down, I don't know. But they normally have that feed, and they can normally give you some sort of a steer into what conversation that they're having. But they never did that. which was strange because they seemed as confused as the rest of us. And we know he's given it for the penalty now for the tug of the shirt, which, as you said, was after review, he let go of the shirt just outside the box. So it's what's called, what Dale Johnson, our former colleague, said it's what's called a factual review. So he didn't have to go to the monitor, but it was completely confusing all round, and they never mentioned it on the commentary. So I don't know if they weren't hearing the VAR discussion or whether they had it turned down, because they never gave us a steer. They were kind of as confused as anybody. Oh, he's giving a free kick outside the box. And, you know, I know Marco Silva was going bananas on the touchline, but nobody knew what was going on and why has he not come to the monitor, and why have they got this free kick? So until you hear the PGMO when they release, if they do release the discussion on that, we'll really never know. But I agree with Oggy. He looked as if the referee looked as if he was waiting. At no point did he go to the whistle when the player was tugging the shirt. I suppose you could say he was given the advantage, which maybe he was, but he certainly didn't blow the whistle until that challenge was made.
Oftentimes, I just want to say, referees, when it's for tugging of a shirt, referees kind of give an indication of that, and you know, using their own hands. There was none of this on the day. So I, similarly watching the game, just thought it was for the foul. Again, they don't have to, but normally that's how referees kind of indicate it.
Go on, Andy.
Yeah, no, I think the process undoubtedly was messy and probably not as they wanted. It's something they'll look at in their review work this week. But actually, if you do watch the footage, John Brooks does give the penalty, and he does say penalty hold. He does give a fist, as in pulling the shirt, once he's given the penalty. So the comms were there, and you read his lips, and he does give a pull of the shirt. So he does actually indicate, although it's not clear to everybody in the stadium, obviously, because it happens. He does it right in front of his body, and it's hold there, and then he just flips out there. But he does a pull of the shirt. So he has explained what he's given it for. The challenge here is kind of muddy the waters completely, because it's really got nothing to do with the situation, the incident, or the process, because the challenge was never even processed by the referee or the VAR. The penalty was awarded for the hold, and once he's awarded the penalty kick, then the VAR's check the challenge, because he's at liberty to do so. But it's a quick check, because I think in real time he would have been very aware that it wasn't a foul and the player won the ball. Then he'd gone back and checked the holding offence, and when he identified that it started outside and finished outside, he then went through the process of informing the referee that he had to overturn his decision to give a free kick. But the process took too long. It looked a bit messy. It wasn't solved very well, and I think that's something they'll look at this week in the VAR hub.
This is one where the officials have actually, they've actually got this spot on. The problem is the confusion for the conspiracy theorists out there, of which there are, many, particularly online. Everybody's up to it against somebody, and Old Trafford, and we're getting these decisions and we're getting that, and we don't. There's, all this sort of nonsense. The officials, apart from the clunkiness of how, and that is an issue that needs to be addressed. Apart from the clunkiness of it, they actually got the decisions in that particular move spot on.
They also got the offside right as well, when Fulham thought they'd scored, Andy. But again, it's the time that it takes, and I thought that semi-automated offside was supposed to hurry this process up. Just explain why it's still taking so long.
Well, at the risk of boring everyone in this, there was quite a few elements to this check, actually, which probably wasn't picked up, it wasn't explained on TV, and I think this is something that PGMO really need to do better at, and explaining, and Premier League explaining the process and the elements involved. There's actually 4 elements to this check, which made it as long as it was. You obviously got the original free kick and the offside of the Fulham player, which was cleared quite quickly in terms of being offside by the semi-automated. But you then got the wall, the free kick hit the wall, which took 3 ricochets within that wall. And then the VAR had to check to make sure that none of those 3 was deemed to be a deliberate play by the Manchester United players, and they were just deflections, because if they were a deliberate play that then went on to the Fulham player, then the Fulham player would no longer be in an offside position, because the phase would have reset itself, if that makes sense. So then you've got to check for a possible handball in the wall, and then you've got to check for the goal scorer, who was probably in an offside position as well, but they didn't get that far. So there was actually 4 elements to that check, and that's why it took so long. But again, it's a process that it just felt forever. And this again, it's something that they need to look at PGMO this week and try and find a way of doing these things quicker. But it's not always quite as straightforward as people think. Like I said, I don't think people picked up that there's actually 4 different checks going on in one check in that moment because they don't communicate it very well.
Here's the problem with these incidents. That Andy's right. There's so much going on here that I think the problem is for the VAR and incidents like this is that there is a lot going on. There's ricochets and possible clearances. Maybe a Fulham player, a United player played it and all that sort of stuff. And they don't want to get it wrong because they have gotten stuff wrong and they've been absolutely smashed for it. And I think there is, I would imagine, an awful lot of pressure when it's not a simplistic decision in the booth. And therefore, I think that's kind of understandable. I think the ones that we sit and look at home and go, right, come on. We've seen it on 2 replays or 1 replay. Let's damn well get on with this. Those are the ones. I think ones like this that are more complicated, I sort of kind of understand it because the VAR wants to make sure he's getting this right and not missing something. Because if he misses something, every Tom, Dick and Harry is going to jump on it. And these are the ones that are slightly more convoluted.
Sounds like you can go over there and help them. Sounds like you're on their side. You want to improve. I think it's good.
Do you know what? I
think it's a good idea.
Committed. He's committed.
Well, I said this to you. I was terrible with referees when I was playing at Chelsea, Celtic and Derby. Right, terrible. But I got way, way more respect for officials when I stopped playing. I wouldn't do it.
Yep.
I couldn't do it. You know when we talk about ex-players going to be referees, I
don't know.
you wouldn't even be able to get your socks on. You wouldn't even be able to referee an underage
I don't want to be a referee, thank you. I'm happy here. I don't need that.
Honestly, you know.
Right, why are you being so nice to him when you've been so angry with all our other referees?
Well, I'm bedding Andy in.
That's that skill for me.
No, I can't. Right, last one, Andy. Surely even you can't defend this. Why are they going so far back for an incident that isn't even clear when they chalked off this Aston Villa goal?
Okay, so yeah, I totally agree in terms of how can they be sure. I've seen no clear evidence in terms of footage or a still to show that the ball's out of play, and that will be the question for PGMO to come out and explain. Listen, I think we can all look at that and say the ball is probably out of play. However, there's no definitive picture that's been released that I've seen that clearly shows it is, and that's a question I'm sure Aston Villa are asking PGMO and the Premier League to justify and come up with. In terms of the time taken, this is considered as the attacking phase of play. So it's gone from one box to the other box in under 20 seconds. It's not broken down. So that will be considered as one attacking phase of play. So I'm quite comfortable that the phase of play is correct. However, I do have questions over what evidence and what footage and what stills they have to confirm that the ball had left the field of play. And that'd be a question, as I said, that I'm sure Aston Villa are asking the Premier League and the PGMO to confirm.
I get that. It's the same phase of play because at no point did Brentford even get a foot on the ball between the ball supposedly going out. And Andy's right. There's no. It looks to the naked eye as we sit here that the ball goes out, the ball is out, but that happens so many times a season where you aren't definitely sure. It happens so many times in offsides where to the naked eye it looks like it's offside, but automated VAR says completely different. So without that definitive view or technology stepping in to say it's definitely out, then you've got to go with the call on the field. And the call on the field was the ball was still in play. I just don't. I find this inconsistent in how they've applied the law or interpretation of it.
It's quite simple. The phase of play stuff I kind of understand, even though it's one end of the pitch to the other. But if there's, bearing in mind the on-field decision was a goal, if there is not a definitive, and it did look as if it was out, if it's not definitive on any camera angle, the goal has to stand. Simple as that.
Here's another question. How long, and how long does a phase of play last? Because Why?
Andy, how long does it last?
Because Villa could have passed the ball around another 2 minutes, and without Brentford touching it, and we could say, well, yeah, it's still the attacking phase. So
no, it's called the attacking phase because
line?
there's forward movement. There's forward movement, Shaka, and I think if you look at it, I think you'll struggle to argue against that. I think the moment the ball would come backwards, I think that's when the phase of play would be reset. They've literally gone from back to front. I think only four players have touched it before it's in the back of the net. So I'm looking at it thinking, to me, that is one attacking phase of play. They've gone from one end of the pitch to the other. Brentford are nowhere near it. There's 4 touches and it's in the back of the net. So I think that's quite understandable and considered one attacking phase of play.
I get that. I agree. It's one phase of play. My argument is there some kind of a time limit, touch limit to this? Because Villa could have passed this ball around a number of other times, and you say...
Have you not just listened to Andy?
Well...
As long as there's forward movement...
So it could be 5 minutes?
No, you can't keep going forward for 5 minutes without either giving the ball away or having to strike it goal.
So if the ball gets to the byline and it's cut backwards, is that a phase of play or no?
What do you mean?
The ball gets to the byline and it's cut backwards, and
Yes.
somebody scores from the ball that's cut backwards.
Yeah, because it's all the one
The ball's
phase of
coming
play.
backwards
Yeah.
then. Then the ball coming backwards.
This is just a silly argument.
I'm just asking.
It's just a silly argument.
There's no definitive line. It's down to the VAR to make that judgment. And I think on this occasion, he's got that part of it right. The interesting part and where the questions will be asked will be in terms of the decision to disallow the goal because of the ball leaving the field of play. And the footage, all the information they use to decide that will be interesting. And I've not seen anything to prove one way or the other, to be honest.